Walk into a job interview, a boardroom, or a crowded restaurant to meet a blind date. Before you even pull out your chair, you can feel it. Every single person in that room is already deciding if they like you, if they trust you, and if you belong there. Popular psychology tells us we have about 7 seconds to make that crucial first impression. It's a comforting thought, giving us just enough time to straighten our posture, flash a smile, and deliver a rehearsed greeting. But that 7-second window is an absolute myth. When researchers Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov at Princeton University put this to the test, they isolated exactly how much time a human needs to evaluate a stranger's face. The data showed that your brain executes a complete subconscious judgment of someone's trustworthiness and competence in exactly 100 milliseconds. That is 1/10 of a second. Before a single syllable leaves your mouth, prehistoric survival software running in the background of your observer's mind has already categorized you as either a friend or a biological threat. To understand how a judgment forms that fast, we have to look at the brain's internal algorithm. Psychologists call this the stereotype content model. Your brain asks, do you intend to harm or help me? This intent forms the horizontal axis, warmth. Next, can you act on that intent? This capability is the vertical axis, competence. The intersection forces observers into 4 emotional prejudices: admiration, pity, envy, or disgust. What triggers these quadrants are deeply rooted physical cues. Through a cognitive bias known as the halo effect, observers look at highly attractive features and assume that person possesses high competence and strong morals. Similarly, the baby face overgeneralization effect reveals that adult faces with large eyes, round cheeks, and smaller noses hijacked our biological instinct to protect infants. These features instantly trigger assessments of high warmth but low competence, which heavily penalizes those individuals in corporate leadership evaluations or legal disputes. Your static physical appearance acts as an unavoidable data input. It feeds directly into the observer's cognitive matrix and forces their brain into a predetermined emotional verdict. But we don't just rely on static bone structure. Our brains actively scan dynamic movements, hunting for deceit through fleeting involuntary microexpressions. Take the phenomenon colloquially known as resting bitch face. Biometric facial analysis software shows that this isn't a neutral resting state at all. It is defined by the subtle, unintended microexpression of contempt. Even when a person feels fine, a slight asymmetry in the lip projects superiority and disdain. This rapid evaluation applies to what we hear just as much as what we see. Psychologist Nalini Ambady analyzed the vocal tones of doctors to see if nonverbal communication predicted their history of medical malpractice litigation. The data showed a striking correlation. Surgeons whose voices projected dominance and lacked anxious concern were overwhelmingly identified as having been sued for malpractice. This outcome held up completely independent of their actual clinical error rates. Conversely, surgeons who projected vocal warmth and active listening were largely shielded from litigation, even when they made similar medical mistakes. In high-stakes environments, patients and peers aren't actually reacting to your objective professional capability. They are reacting to the emotional subtext of your nonverbal and vocal delivery. Once that 100 millisecond judgment is formed, it solidifies. Psychologist Solomon Asch identified this as the primacy effect, showing that the brain weights the very first piece of information it receives far heavier than anything that follows, simply to conserve cognitive energy. This initial impression becomes an inescapable lens. Thanks to confirmation bias, the observer will actively ignore any future behavior that contradicts their initial verdict and eagerly hunt for evidence that supports it. For years, the corporate world tried to hack this system by manipulating body language. The most famous attempt was power posing, the idea that holding expansive, space-taking postures would chemically alter your brain to project unshakable dominance. Rigorous replication studies debunked those claims, and the lead author of the original paper ultimately retracted her belief in the physiological effects. Forcing an artificially expansive posture actually backfires. It signals aggressive dominance, which triggers an observer's threat response rather than establishing warmth. We end up in the ultimate psychological trap. We are judged instantly. That judgment is locked in by confirmation bias, and fake physiological hacks do not save us. If a negative first impression is biologically locked in and immune to fake posture hacks, Does that mean the verdict is permanent? To find out, researchers Thomas Mann and Melissa Ferguson introduced participants to a fictitious man named Francis West. They described Francis violently breaking into a neighbor's house and stealing precious items. As you'd expect, participants instantly generated a deeply negative biological and psychological impression of him. Here is the problem with traditional recovery. Having Francis do nice things later or offering generic apologies completely failed. That positive information bounces right off the brain's confirmation bias without changing the implicit negative impression one bit. The researchers discovered there is only one mechanism capable of rewriting the algorithm. They call it total narrative reinterpretation. They provided the participants with the missing context. Francis broke into the house because it was actively on fire, and the stolen items he took out were actually the neighbor's trapped children. Providing this missing context instantly deleted the original negative bias. Overturning a bad impression requires presenting compelling new context to the initial event, rather than just apologizing for it. But ideally, you want to bypass a negative impression altogether. For your next social encounter, remember that evolutionary psychology dictates that humans must assess intent before capability. You have to prioritize signaling warmth over competence. You can do this with 2 specific physical directives before a single word is spoken. Fire a genuine, eye-crinkling Duchenne smile, and maintain a posture of relaxed openness with uncrossed arms to clearly signal safety. People aren't judging your inherent soul or your worth. Their biology is simply asking if you are safe. Answer that question first, and you control the code.